Pardon me while I have a strange interlude.
There is nothing else. Life is an obscure hobo bumming a ride on the omnibus of art.
Along the misty corridors of time, and in those corridors I see figures, strange figures.
Welcome back, my friends, to the AP Strange Show. This is a very special AP Strange Show tonight. It is brought to you by Federation Services, Spay and Neutering for Tribbles. If you have a pet tribble and you want to bring it in, spaying and neutering of tribbles is a very important thing. So if you catch a stray and find some out in the galaxy, or they're dropped off on your ship by some wayward merchant, please bring them to the clinic to be spayed and neutered, because they can become a real problem otherwise, especially if you have Klingons around. So that's going to be our little sponsor spot today. And for the episode itself, I have a co-host with me this time. He is going to be the Leonard Bones McCoy to my James T. Kirk, as we invite on a man who is an author, a historian, two-time Jeopardy contestant, and the host of one of my favorite podcasts of all time, The Saucy Life. Welcome to the show, Aaron Gulyas.
Thank you. Good to be here, guys.
You're very welcome. And today we're doing a Third Time's the Charm episode talking about Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. So going boldly where no man has gone before.
Yes, indeed.
So, Aaron, I always just kind of intuited, and I know that you've talked about it before, but you always struck me as a big Trekkie.
Yeah.
One of the way I kind of lead into these is about the movie specifically, but also the general franchise and how that's impacted your life. Like, how did you come to Star Trek?
I came to Star Trek like most Gen Xers did. It was syndicated on one of our local TV stations, and it was on 5 nights a week at 7 p.m. So it would be on, and I'd watch it, and sometimes I didn't really know what I was watching. I remember, I think the first one I really paid attention to was the episode Gamesters of Triskelion, where they got the people sort of like fighting, and they got the brains in the jars betting the quatlus on people, and that one really stuck with me. And then I got David Gerald's forget the name of the book, but it's like Facts About Star Trek or something from a Scholastic book order, and it had like all the behind the scenes stuff and everything, and it was sort of pitched at 10-year-olds. So I was like, oh, this is really cool. And I do remember seeing on video Star Trek II when I was probably about 9, I think. Yeah. And what really got me was the worm thing in the ear, Khan's mind control worm. That freaked me out. But then I started, reading the Star Trek novels from pocketbooks and buying Starlog magazine whenever there was a Star Trek story in it. And then Next Generation came out, and I started to watch that and read a bunch more stuff, and really got into all these weird fan produced books about like the starships and everything, and sort of the like fan designed starships, and really dorky stuff. But it's always been a big a big part of what I've been into as far as pop culture and media stuff goes. And it'll from time to time be eclipsed by Doctor Who or something. But no, Star Trek has always been there. And well, as much as I love Star Wars, like especially the original trilogy, of course, I never got into reading like the, licensed Star Trek novel or Star Wars novels and things like that, and like all these shows that would come out. It's like, yeah, I don't know. I can't get into it. But Star Trek has always been something that I've been deeply into.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe people don't realize so much nowadays, or it doesn't seem this way nowadays, but pretty much everybody's a Trekkie now. Like, it's just ubiquitous. Like, everybody, it's not weird to like Star Trek, but once upon a time, you only had a finite amount of Trek, and you were a kind of a big nerd.
Yeah. I mean, it was 78 episodes, and then a movie with elderly people in it every couple of years.
Yeah.
I mean, that was Star Trek. And then once Next Generation started, it started to pick up steam a little bit. But yeah, it was very much, it was for dorks. It was a nerd thing back when nerd culture wasn't this like catered to marketable demographic.
Right. Yeah, I mean, Blackwolf, did you have the similar experience with that? Because, I mean, you didn't necessarily strike me as a Trekkie before. But
Never been a Trekkie, but I've always had like respect for the show and everything.
Yeah.
It was always on Saturday mornings. I remember watching it. My dad wanted to watch it. We watched Star Trek, and I always liked it. And I remember the Next Generation starting, and I remember watching that. Maybe the first two seasons, I think we watched like as a family for whatever reason. But for some reason, my dad loved the movies, so we always went to see the movies when they came out. And so I know I saw at least 3, 4, and 5 in the theater. I may have seen Wrath of Khan in the theater, but I was probably too young to remember it. But so like my biggest Trek memories are usually the movies. That was like my Trek universe. I never read the books. I never followed anything. Although I have, for some reason, seen every episode of Enterprise. I can't explain that.
That's okay.
It was fine to watch at midnight on Sundays when I didn't have cable. And so I would watch George Michael's Sports Machine. If anyone remembers that show, the guy had the machine will tell us about hockey this week, and he pressed a button. But that ended at midnight, and then Enterprise came on, and I was a big Quantum Leap fan. So like, Bakula,
Scott Bakula.
All right, I'm going to watch this. So yeah, I did somehow have seen every episode of Enterprise, but besides that, not a lot of Trek in my life after that, though.
Okay, yeah.
I really should check it out, but I always had a hard time getting past the theme song for Enterprise.
It's terrible. Terrible.
I didn't remember it. Was it particularly terrible or not? I don't remember.
It was
awful.
It was awful. It was a Dionne Warwick song.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to look this up after now.
Yeah. It was and there was like the closing music, like when you watch it on streaming or on physical media, it's like a standard sort of Star Trek-y orchestral closing music, and they could have used that for the beginning, but they decided to make it different. This was going to be a different Star Trek, and it's the same reason it wasn't called Star Trek Enterprise until the 3rd season. It was just Enterprise. They were trying to like really lean into the prequel. This is something different. This is something new. Of course, you had the same people behind the scenes running it that like made Voyager, so it's not like there's any sort of like, it wasn't like Battlestar Galactica, which was not too far off as far as the new Battlestar Galactica coming out, it's that same sort of first decade of the 21st century. And Enterprise was flawed but fun is sort of how I think of it.
Yeah, I'll have to give it a chance. I mean, I always considered myself a Trekkie, but really it's TOS and Next Generation and the movies. And that's like, everything else I like. It's all right. I'll watch it if it's on, but I'm not like, I don't know episodes by name.
Yeah.
I might not know the characters as intimately. But I really think there's something special about the original crew.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's something I'm sure Well, that's what this movie, the third one, kind of is about as far as Leonard Nimoy was concerned. It's kind
Yeah.
of everybody kind of helping out. And yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because in the original series, you know, you'd have like people below the level of the top three guys. They'd get something to do now and then, but you know, Uhura, it was hailing frequencies open, sir. That was, I mean, most of
Right.
what she did. And Chekhov had his Russian gimmick that got old pretty quick. But yeah, and in Star Trek the Motion Picture, the supporting cast had almost nothing to do. Um
The
in
cast had almost nothing to do.
Yeah, and in Star
People standing around.
yeah, and in Wrath of Khan, it wasn't much better. They bring in Savick, who gets
Yeah.
more lines than the original supporting cast put together, and it's really it really does feel like a William Shatner Leonard Nimoy vehicle, and the thing about Star Trek films in general is Star Trek Star Trek was a science fiction show. It was not an action adventure show. And so we get Star Trek the Motion Picture, which is boring and long and has these ideas, thinky ideas, and it's kind of a drag to sit through. But then from Wrath of Khan on, they turned Star Trek into action adventure movies, and especially with
Right.
the Next Generation movies. And it's great, but it's very distinct from the TV
Yeah.
show. And I think I think that's something that we tend to forget about the motion pictures. Like this one at least felt like a really long, boring episode of the TV show, rather than just a long, boring movie. So
Right.
it's they are distinct, I think.
Yeah. I mean, with the movies, it's almost like the first one tried to go high concept and remove the original cast almost on purpose. Like,
Yeah.
like, oh well, this exists in this universe, but look at the budget we have. Look at the special effects, and I mean, it's cool to look at. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, but the man doesn't get dragged out.
It
And
it is it is painful sometimes.
yeah,
Best thing about it was the redesigned Enterprise. I love that movie. Enterprise is just my favorite science fiction ship of all time.
Well, I think we timed out the glory shot of when they're flying to the Enterprise at the beginning.
Yeah.
It's like a good 7 minutes
Yeah,
of just
yeah.
flying around the Enterprise. It's like,
It's-
holy cow, this is just going.
And I love that they reused a lot of that for Wrath of Khan when they
they
do the
did.
same thing, because gosh, it probably cost about $50 million. But yeah, it's just so it just drags. They just linger on things like you wouldn't believe, and it's like, are they trying to hit a certain length or something? It was very, very dragged out.
So I thought you said that the new Enterprise looked cool, and it did.
Yeah.
The redesign, but I don't know if anyone else noticed this, but the actual uniforms blended into the background. It's
Yes.
everyone looked exactly the same. It was very easy to lose track of who anybody was,
Yep.
and they're all just wearing gray.
Yeah, gray, bluish gray pajamas with the little booties built on, like the feet were sewn in.
Yes, I did notice that.
Ridiculous. I don't know why. I mean, I think there was a sense that I think the director oh shoot, I'm blanking on the director, Robert Wise. I think he thought that the original uniforms with the bright colors were a little too gaudy, and so they wanted to sort of tone everything down. But I think they just took it way too far in the other direction with those things, because they're just they're just fabric wallpaper. It's just
As someone who's not a Trekkie, I'm coming into a lot of this kind of cold a little bit, just feeling my way into it. But it seemed like the first movie almost, I think AP said it earlier, forgot what Trek was about, what people actually want to go to a Star Trek movie for, and it tried to make my friend said it's 2001, and it really does try to nail that high concept. But yeah, halfway through they realized that Star Wars was huge. They had to try to like fuse the two together, and they just made a really boring, confused movie.
Yeah, and one of the things about it was that it sort of started off as a relaunch of the TV series in the 70s, and this was going to be the two-part opener of this, and then the Paramount network that they were going to start never got off the ground in the 70s. And like, well, we've done the redesign of the ship, we've designed costumes, we've done all of this, we've done screen tests, we've hired actors. Let's make it a movie. And it went through so many different writers, and it was like the whole production of it's amazing it even happened. But the movies that came after it, Paramount sort of learned the lessons of, one, let's just make Gene Roddenberry an executive consultant and not listen to him. So that's something.
Not listening to Gene Roddenberry is always a good idea.
Yeah, I think I sent AP a message when I was watching too, and I was like, so basically, the lesson I've learned from this is that if you want to make a good Star Trek vehicle, tell Gene Roddenberry to go away.
Yes.
Just go sit down, Gene.
And I didn't know that.
Well, the thing is, and like in the classic series, all the great stuff we think about Star Trek, like the great episodes, the Klingons, all that, Gene Roddenberry didn't come up with any of it. It was DC Fontana and the guy who was the script editor who Gene Kuhn. Gene Kuhn, he did a whole lot of that stuff, and the third season Roddenberry wasn't even on the show really. He was just sort of doing other things. But Paramount learned their lesson, and so 2, 3, 4 at least are significantly different and really good, and make this nice little trilogy that that is sort of has internal continuity, and it's kind of internal continuity. I've got some issues, but it's sort of self-contained.
Well, I mean, wasn't Roddenberry working on a script where Spock has to go back in time to shoot JFK?
Yes, I read that.
That was one of the options. Is there's a JFK assassination thing.
It's so wonderful. Like, can we get a fan shot version of that, please?
I'm surprised there hasn't been one.
I kind of want to see that.
But I think everybody would have been like, so that's basically City on the Edge of Forever, but with JFK instead of Edith Keeler, right? So it's like going back in time and having to kill this person. It's like, we've done that, and it was done better this first time.
I like that.
And it was Harlan Ellison that wrote that.
Yeah.
Harlan Ellison wrote the original, so like, why would you...
Why would
I like that.
I
like that his Roddenberry's idea was we have to go back and actually kill JFK. Like, that's really twisted, dude.
It is. It is.
It's bizarre. We have to kill the president.
Roddenberry was he was an interesting cat. I don't know. It's I'll stop.
Well, I remember. I think when you were covering the 9 on your show, you kind of got into the Roddenberry stuff, and I was like, "Ooh, this is great."
Yeah,
I'm like, this is entirely justified snark right here. So
there was a bit of contempt. It kind of oozed out of my speakers.
Just the way he writes a movie script basically about himself. It's and then there's the movie he did. I think Rock Hudson did it. Pretty Maids All in a Row. Creepiest thing ever. It's like this teacher like preying on young girl students at a boarding school or something. He would have not done well in the 21st century, I don't think.
Yeah, it's like, well, thanks for getting the ball rolling, Gene. We'll take it from here.
yeah. Thanks for this initial concept, and now we're gonna bring in better writers to make this really fly.
Yeah, it's just crazy because so he had really a lot less to do with Wrath of Khan.
Oh yeah, he would, and Search for Spock and all that. Yeah,
right. And Wrath of Khan, I think, even if you've never seen a single Star Trek vehicle at all, and you're just unfamiliar with it, going in cold, I feel like that's a great sci-fi movie with some really good action and drama on its own, just as a self-contained thing.
Yeah, I agree. It works really well. You don't need to know who these characters are. They're on a spaceship. Kirk's the admiral.
Right.
Let's go. And there's some good sort of philosophical back and forth about the whole Genesis device and the ethics of the Genesis device, which is very Star Trekky.
Yeah.
If you've never seen the original series, you don't know the backstory about Khan, but you don't need to. It's completely unnecessary to
Right.
enjoying the movie. And
Plus, he tells you, in
yeah,
case you forgot.
yeah, it's like we marooned him here, and now he's mad. That's all you need.
Right.
It's like the simplest story ever. And yeah, Wrath of Khan was so good. I can't get over how good of a Star Trek movie that was. And I think we were sort of you see it and you're like, oh, now there's a Star Trek 3. Oh my gosh, it's going to be even better than 2.
Right.
And I don't think it is. I don't know. And it's it's the whole like, well, the odd numbered movies are terrible, and the whole odd numbered, even numbered Star Trek movie thing.
Right.
That's sort of a meme.
Are you familiar with that, Blackwolf? That seems to be like
yes.
yeah.
My
the
friend,
odd numbers. Yeah.
I have heard of that, and until this week or last week when I watched these, I actually agree with that. I was like, well, obviously it makes sense, but I'm gonna go. I really enjoyed 3. I really enjoyed Search for Spock. I have my reasons for it too, and I thought it worked well because I thought Wrath of Khan was awesome. And like,
it's
like
hard
I
to
say, like,
top that.
Yeah.
yes, I tried to. I would say my girlfriend has never seen anything Star Trek, so I was like, hey, I got to watch these movies for this show. Will you do it with me? She's like, yeah, of course. And I could feel one just dragging her down, like pulling her out of this completely. What the hell have I gotten myself into? Why are you doing this? But then 2, she was right back in, even though she laughed at me at the end when I was crying.
Oh, yeah.
I was just losing you'd have to be stoned not to feel that,
tough.
man.
It's tough.
It's
tough.
It was devastating, but I thought I loved Wrath of Khan. I had to laugh because the idea of, because I think what was Shatner, like 52 when they made that, and what it was, Tom Cruise like 70 now, hanging off the sides of planes. But I love the idea of like making in 1982 an action film could star men in their 50s who are completely out of shape and not even moving very much.
Yep.
And have it be considered an action film, which I thought was really wonderful. There was a lot of sitting around for an action film.
There was. I liked
that. But I loved it though. I loved every second of it.
The sitting around, I was thinking, it's sort of Nicholas Meyer, directing it and writing a lot of it uncredited. He takes a look at this and because he wasn't a Star Trek guy, and he looks at this and he says, oh, this is naval combat in space. So there's like elements like run silent, run deep, and this, like, you've got the ships, and they're acting more like naval vessels than they are like Star Trek or Star Wars, fighters zipping around. And the downside to that is a lot of long lingering shots on tense faces, hovering over their controls. And but the tension ramped up well, and James Horner's music was so good. So good. And I just think it's hilarious seeing how prolific Horner would be, that they had to go with Horner because it was a budget thing. They could not afford Jerry Goldsmith again. So they found this cheaper guy, and the cheaper guy was James Horner, and did this amazing score for the thing. Yeah.
I also thought it looked good too. Like, I was very surprised that, because I said I watched the motion picture. I watched the 4K, and it looked really great. Like, and I was not expecting much coming into the second one, but I was very impressed by good sets, pretty decent special effects.
It was one of the first non-Lucas movies that Industrial Light and Magic did.
And I'm always happy to see like an actual model too.
Yeah.
Like, you give me a real model spaceship floating around, even if I can kind of see the outline of where you did the blue screen work. I don't care. That's a real thing, and I'm all into that. And I really dug like the like Khan's people, the like they're kind of like blow combed sort of like sort of like desert punk thing going on. I was like, this is awesome. And I was impressed to find out that was like the that Ricardo Montalban, that wasn't like a breastplate. Like that dude was ripped for a 62-year-old man. Like,
It was
Man,
impressive.
it's
It was
very
impressive.
impressive, and
Yeah.
I was like, I really enjoyed that. Oh, this
Yeah,
is
I wouldn't want to mess with Khan.
No.
But,
yeah. I do like when he picks up Chekhov and throws him in
Yes.
the air.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Like,
Conveniently, the spacesuit had a handle on him.
well,
on
yeah.
it for him to do that.
I I thought of that like right before he did it. I was like, there's a handle on that. Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
it's a manhandle for manhandling people.
Although I'm pretty sure I could manhandle Chekhov. I'm not saying that I can take him, but I think I can tussle. I can Star Trek tussle. Like there's a lot of
I could probably really work him over now because he's like 85 or something.
Well, yeah.
So I could probably handle that.
We could all push him around a little bit,
And we should. Yeah.
Well, what you got to do is interlace your fingers so that your two hands make like this weird hammer fist, and then drop it on him.
Yes.
And, not only will that knock Chekhov down, but it will probably break all of your fingers.
I always appreciate, because I kind of had the same feeling. I was like, about a year ago, we watched View to a Kill, the last Roger Moore, and I really appreciate like age appropriate fighting in movies where it's like Roger Moore was like 57 years old, and most of his fighting looks like he's doing the twist. Kind of shake back and forth, and I really appreciate that was a lot of the fighting in 2 and 3. Search for Spock was a lot of like very age appropriate, just Shatner grabbing hold of a garment and tussling.
Yeah,
right.
I like that.
Yeah, it's like you couldn't really tell when the stunt man was doing stuff, because this is stuff that you expect William Shatner to be able to do, right?
Yeah, it's just he might fall down. It might be a small jump. Not a lot. We're not tasking these men. They're not hanging off of airplanes. No one's learning, karate or something. No, it's just a tussle.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, well, as you alluded to, at least they kind of were upfront about that in Wrath of Khan, where Kirk is kind of like waxing nostalgic and looking back on his life and feeling old and washed up and not,
yeah,
not worth a damn anymore. And McCoy gives him those spectacles.
Yes. Yes.
So, I mean, they kind of get that out of the way, because, I mean, these movies are over a decade after the series had ended, the original series.
Yeah.
So,
I think Wrath of Khan would have been like almost 15 years after it ended.
When did the show end? When was the last season?
69.
Okay, so yeah, I think Wrath of Khan was 82, I think.
Yeah.
I think it said, it's like 13 years. Oh,
yeah.
Jeez.
Right.
Yeah, that they were upfront. They were upfront about being old. I appreciated that. As like, we're not trying to make this appear as though they can really do anything. They can sit and talk and think, and then occasionally shake.
Yeah.
Well, they still do stuff though. They still do stuff.
It was age appropriate. That's my point. Age appropriate action film. I like it.
And by Star Trek 6, they forgot that. That reminds me, sitting in the theater watching Star Trek 6, when they at the end, when they break up the assassination attempt, who do they send up the ladder to where the assassin is? They send Scotty, who is like
you've not seen 6,
most out of shape member of the crew, and they send him scrambling up these steps to like take out an assassin. I'm like, this is what? Why?
Well,
why?
I think it's hilarious
too.
Go ahead, AP. Sorry.
You have a certain set of muscles that you build up when you climb around in Jeffries tubes a lot.
So that's true. That's a good point.
This is true.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
I'm sorry, Blackwolf. What were you going to say?
Oh, no problem. Well, I was just thinking that it's especially interesting seeing that, like, you jump ahead to Star Trek V, which is, I think we can all agree, is a ludicrous movie in every respect. It opens with Kirk doing the most difficult physical action known to man that like 5 people can do on planet Earth, can free climb El Capitan. But Kirk's just, I'm going on vacation to do this. And, if I have to use a girdle to do it, so be it. But I like that Wrath of Khan was accepting of aging. And then he jumped ahead 10 years and he's like, well, I can do this.
Yeah.
How about if I open the film climbing a mountain with my bare hands?
I think
what do you think?
That's sort of, if you didn't know that Shatner wrote and directed it, after watching that scene, you absolutely would. It's like, oh, Nick Meyer had me like wearing glasses, but I'm gonna climb a mountain. Yeah. And in Star Trek 4, I remember thinking even at the time, I was like, I think Captain Kirk's a little too old for Catherine Hicks there. I think this is,
Yeah.
I don't know. It looks like his
Yeah.
daughter.
He was still pouring on that Bill Shatner charm, though.
Yeah.
You know, like that's his superpower. That's
It
Captain
is.
Kirk's superpower.
It is. It's and like most superpowers, it's incomprehensible to most of us. But yeah.
I did think he was quite. I think actually the whole cast in 4 was quite charming. I think they did a.
Yeah.
I think that was. I was telling AP the other day, it is a perfect caper film, and I just enjoy it. Is if you take it, just you could take everything out of it. That's Star Trek. This is just a good old guy caper film, and I'm all for it. It reminded me. If I can work this movie in any conversation, I will. One of my favorite films of all time, Sneakers.
Oh yes,
It's one of my all-time favorite movies, and even like the San Francisco setting, like old guys, like kind of in over their head, figuring out a big plot, working with their wits. Like this is just an awesome movie for that alone.
Yeah, absolutely. Sneakers. I saw that in the theater. I think.
Me too. Go watch Sneakers. It's one of the best movies ever made. 100%.
Great cast. Robert Redford and River Phoenix and
Sidney Poitier, Dan Aykroyd, Ben Kingsley.
Yeah, it's too good of a cast for that movie. It's just shocking that this like sort of like mid-budget heist movie is like, oh my God.
I'm always
Ben
down for a
Kingsley.
caper. Caper films are across. I have sat through like all 4 seasons of Leverage more times than I care to count, because I will watch capers. All day, every day.
Nothing like a good heist.
A good heist. Love it. And we're way off topic now, and I apologize.
Well, not really, because there's a little bit of a fun heist element in Star Trek 3.
Totally is. You're right. Thank you for saving me, Aaron. I appreciate that.
And actually, that's my favorite part of the film is stealing the Enterprise out of dry dock or space dock. And I was reading today a little bit about like the production and background. And initially, a lot more of the film was like building up to the heist, and the problem was that you'd have heist, other thing, heist, other thing, heist, other thing. It was just very disjointed. So they compressed stealing the Enterprise and made it its own sort of set piece in the movie, which I think probably worked better. But I would have watched half a movie about them stealing the Enterprise. I would have liked more details.
It didn't seem a lot difficult.
No, it didn't. It's like
right. That's what struck me. Is like they went to send the ship after him, the Excelsior, I guess.
Yeah.
That, Scotty had sabotaged, so they can't. And I'm like, that's the only starship they have besides the Enterprise.
Yeah, in space dock. Yeah,
every ship can go warp speed. Just send anything after them.
Yeah,
like
you could send a small shuttle.
Yes, they all go warp speed. Just go.
Yeah. And I, even as a kid, I didn't like the comedy noises the Excelsior made when it stopped. It reminded me.
I was thinking about that. Yes.
Of the man with the golden gun. Or no, was it Live and Let Die? I think it was Live and Let Die. One of the first 2 Roger Moore ones. There's this incredible car stunt where the car sort of goes up and then like does a sort of barrel roll.
That's the one with the voodoo. Which one is that?
Live and Let Die.
That's Live and Let Die. Yeah.
And it's an amazing stunt. And they added this comedy slide whistle sound.
Yes.
And it's just like, what? Who? This is not for 5-year-olds. And even a 5-year-old would think that's dumb. But the comedy ka-clunk.
Yeah, I rewound that because I was like, did I actually hear that?
Yeah,
I had to rewind it. It was there. It was there.
It was bad. And
Scotty made sure that would be piped through the ship's
and it's funny. We were talking about Gene Roddenberry and his input in his notes on the script for Star Trek 3. One of his big problems was he's like, Scotty should not be able to remove 3 things and disable a starship. He's like, this is unrealistic. I'm like,
and that's probably pretty true.
It's like none of it's real. It's a movie. So and I mean, and what we want to get bogged down in the details. That's what you'd get in Next Generation. It's like you get like half a page of technobabble about how they're disabling the ship, and no, just show it not working, and then have Scotty make a joke. That's all. That's the difference between TV Star Trek and action film Star Trek where we got to go boom, 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 boom. It's much
Right.
more. It's much pacier, but yeah, stealing the Enterprise was great. I think one of the best things is when the doors aren't opening, right? They're sort of
Yeah.
backing the ship out, and maybe I'm reading too much into this, but when they say 1/4 impulse, I just remember Star Trek 2. Thrusters only while in space dock, Captain. It's like, ooh, they're going fast now. They're going fast, but the doors aren't opening, and like they're trying to get the doors open, and we don't have to know how they're getting the doors open. We just know that Scotty's pressing buttons and everybody's looking nervous. That's all you need. So I think sometimes it's easy to fall down these rabbit holes of, well, how exactly did he open the doors? I don't know about that. That seems a little iffy to me. But in episode 37, they opened the doors by doing something completely different, and I hope somebody got fired for that. The sort of comic book guy kind of attitude. But I do have some concerns continuity wise with Star Trek 3, and I want to know what you guys think, because the end of Star Trek 2. We've got Kirk with Carol Marcus. They're looking at the new Genesis planet, and she says, like, how are you? And he says, I feel young. And it's like this sort of, he's coping pretty well. And then Star Trek 3 stars, he's like, I'm deeply troubled, walking around. And it's almost like more time has passed between 2 and 3 than we think. They've transferred off the trainee crew. Genesis is like Federation-wide news. They've re-recorded the Genesis video with Kirk instead of Marcus, probably because so they wouldn't have to pay BB Bish money for a period. They reused that footage, but it just, and then there's when Chekhov reports that Spock's quarters have been entered. Kirk says this entire crew seems on the verge of obsessive behavior concerning Mr. Spock, and we've seen no evidence of that. None. Right. It's just Chekhov mentions it, and I need to go back and reread the novelization, which was based on earlier drafts of the script and before the film was edited, because there's a lot of stuff that was taken out, and I'm wondering if there were some other things about Spock that would prompt Kirk to say something like that, because it just, this entire crew, it's like, no, it's just idiot Chekhov. But it's interesting that that kind of doesn't match up. And there's the other, when they pull into space dock, pull into space dock like it's a car, when they enter space dock, and the Excelsior's there, and Sulu says it's got transwarp drive. Something that was cut from the script was that Sulu was in line to be captain of the Excelsior, which they end up paying off in Star Trek 6. But so that added a little depth to Sulu's decision to basically junk his career by helping Kirk. So, for Sulu, there were real consequences, and that gets cut, and I mean, it's fine, but it's one of those things where, do you want every question answered, or do you want a fun film that moves quickly? So it's finding that balance.
Yeah.
I felt like the beginning was too rushed on that one. I really felt like, because I have no problem reading Wikipedia entries of movies and then going to watch them, doesn't bother me. So I felt like there was going to be more of McCoy acting crazy.
Yes.
It's like half a scene, which was soundtracked by some awesome Starfleet sex jazz, which I was really into. That music was jamming. I was so down with that music.
You're talking about in the cafe?
In the bar?
Yes, when they're in the bar, and
with the Tribbles.
There's Tribbles, yes, and he's trying to buy a pay off a pirate, trying to pay a pirate to take him to the Genesis planet, and it's just that great like foreplay level Starfleet sex jazz, and I was jamming to it. I loved it so much because I'm, as we've talked about, I am very much into Key Party Bones from the first movie with the medallion and the beard. That is
chest hair, the plunging neckline on his jumpsuit.
I think that is my absolute favorite character. If anyone out there makes action figures, make me a Key Party Bones. I want one.
That would be outstanding. Yeah.
With sex jazz. You press the button and you get Starfleet sex jazz.
Yeah, that cafe or bar or whatever, that set and the bridge of the Klingon ship. When I read that, this was still like Star Trek II being produced by Paramount's TV movie division, not the cinematic movie division with a correspondingly smaller budget, those sets really, to me, looks like a TV show.
It was the same set that they just dressed up differently.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
It sure looked like it.
The Starfleet bar felt like a hotel bar in Florida. Like it had that all white feel to it with some a couple of like neon lights and maybe a palm tree, and that was it. That was the entire thing. I thought the Starfleet was doing pretty good. I think they could provide a better bar for the people.
I had the sense that this was just like an independent establishment that was kind of next to Starfleet.
Maybe it was like a speakeasy. Maybe it's like a Starfleet speakeasy.
But also in that scene, the woman that comes up and talks to him, that's Grace Lee Whitney, who played Yeoman Rand in the original.
Is it?
Series. Yeah.
I never picked up on that. Oh my gosh.
You, man, you're
That's
bringing
wild.
the knowledge, AP. Very, very nice. I have no idea what that means. So
at least she did something useful, unlike Nurse Chapel just standing up and looking out the window for 3 seconds. How much did you get paid for that? That was.
Well,
you get paid in a convention appearances. That's how you get paid.
Yeah,
that's the money right there.
Yeah, Janice Rand in the original series was kind of an important character. She was kind of like right next to Kirk. She was kind of supposed to be a love interest for Kirk, I think, originally.
Yeah,
rewrote her character.
She is a female in space, therefore she is a love interest for Captain Kirk.
But she reappears in the series a bunch of times after, I think.
I'd have to watch it. I need to watch the series.
The transporter chief in the motion picture too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I know who you're talking about. That scene freaked me out, by the way. That's one of those scenes that scared the hell out of me when I was a kid. Was the transporter? That terrifying.
And the guy on the radio saying, "Attention, Enterprise, what we got back didn't live long, fortunately." It's just like their bodies turned inside out or something.
And we could have gotten some real Cronenberg kind of like body horror there. Like a teratoma, like the teeth and like one eyeball or something. It'd been really cool. But no, let's go back to gray uniforms.
Yeah,
well, no wonder Bones was so terrified, because he was had conspiracy theories about the transporter beam or something at the beginning of the motion picture. He shows up.
He's very, very suspicious of it. Yeah.
Well, they took him away from his swinger commune, apparently.
Yeah.
Sad. Sad.
He was living the life.
Was he ever, man?
But that's kind of one thing I did miss from this movie, Search for Spock, is I definitely love some surly Bones. I'm totally in it for the damn it Jims and him getting. I'm never not amused by him being really frustrated with Spock. It's
yeah, and without that dynamic, it feels really off. I mean, because you don't have Spock from the movie, and I agree about Bones. He's got nothing to do.
Yeah,
except be strange a couple times, and
what
not
he does
often
do,
enough.
What he does do is a pretty dead-on Leonard Nimoy.
Yeah,
because he has to act like Spock. So I mean, we're not even really talking about what happens in the movies for listeners here, but basically what happened is Spock mind melded.
It's kind of in the title, dude.
Well,
they search for Spock.
No.
But his mind,
Yes.
Well, my little MST3K bit for that was when the title pops up and says "Search for Spock." You see the capsule that he got fired onto Genesis in. They show that with the title over it, and I'm like, "Whoop, found him!
There he is.
He's right there.
There he is.
Poofy's over." Yeah.
But at the end of for listeners, at the end of Wrath of Khan, Spock mind melds with McCoy. So basically, in Search for Spock, what we see is McCoy, kind of with alternate personalities, and one of them is Spock.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought it was really impressive how he could kind of do like the eyebrow raise and like Spock a little bit. Yeah. And I'm like, well, I mean, Leonard Nimoy is directing this movie too, so he's probably being really annoying and coaching DeForest Kelly on how exactly to do it.
But I think one of the things about oh shoot, I forgot what I was going to say.
Oh shit.
But no, because what you said about Nimoy directing reminded me of something I read where when Nimoy was actually in it, when he's unconscious, near the end,
Yeah.
and he's talking to McCoy, he said it was very difficult to know what was going on as a director with his eyes closed. And DeForest Kelley would sort of claim and insist that Nimoy was trying to use movements of his eyeballs under his eyelids to try to direct Kelly in like the way he was acting, and Nimoy denied that, but it was just one of that just sort of struck me that I read that in an interview once. But yeah, it's a different dynamic with the characters, definitely.
And it's got to be a weird dynamic to act alongside somebody and pretty much be like on equal ground with them, and then be like directed by them. Like it's got to be weird, and especially for Bill Shatner, because he's the most important guy in the room at his own mind all the time. So
yeah, I think the way, from what I've read, the way it sort of worked was Nimoy made it really clear to Shatner that he was going to take care of Shatner and make sure that he had the spotlight. Because in the original draft of the script, Kirk was under house arrest and Sulu stole the Enterprise. So Shatner's like, this isn't going to work. I'm in charge. Funny. I'm going to be doing this. So, which is how, I mean, you read about the production of the original series. It was like almost like Nimoy and Shatner were counting their lines to make sure that they had more than everybody else, and Shatner had to make sure he had more than Nimoy. Right. He was very insecure about the amount of fan mail Nimoy was getting and how popular Spock was. So, but if you're a movie star, a TV star, that's you gotta watch out for that stuff to a degree. But I think Nimoy did a good job of getting a really good performance out of Shatner. I thought it was Shatner's acting and his character work was really good. When David gets killed, Shatner's reaction, I mean, that's actual
bastards.
Actual acting from Shatner. And
I was gonna say that I have in my head just over the years that very hammy Shatner performance, and it's always going to be there. He's a hammy actor, but I was surprised at like how effective he actually was in 2, 3, and 4, especially. Like there's a progression to his character through those movies, and you can see it there.
Yeah,
and I really enjoyed his work. Like, oh, Shatner can actually do a pretty good job of this. And I thought all the actors in the movies were actually pretty damn good. I was really surprised at how much I enjoyed the performances. I thought Nimoy was excellent. And I think they had people like Sulu and Chekhov and Uhura and Scotty, especially when they're in the scenes, they really sell those scenes. And I thought for all of them, I thought what I liked about Search for Spock the most was that it was after, the first one being too big and the second one being more of an action film. I thought the third one was, I liked that it was small.
Yeah.
Like it was not a giant story. It was a very small story about a small group of people. And I really liked that about the movie. I thought that was a cool way to come from Wrath of Khan, where it was this big swashbuckling adventure, that it turned it into like, it's basically, it's almost a love story between Kirk and Spock in a way.
It is. Yeah. It's this effort to sacrifice, they're sacrificing everything on the word of Spock's father about some weird Vulcan mysticism thing to put his brain back in his head. And or his mind back in his brain. But yeah, it's a slower, more sort of methodical, not in a good way, sort of deliberately paced film, and it works really well. And there's some things that we kind of add to the Star Trek mythos. I think the Klingons in this movie, it's like you can draw a direct line from the Klingons in this movie to the Klingons in Next Generation and Deep Space Nine. I think this is where the
good
Klingons
makeup work too.
Yes,
the Klingons look great.
They did.
The inside of the Bird of Prey doesn't look so great. It's about as big as my little office I'm in right now. But the actual makeup work is stellar.
My thing about the Bird of Prey is that it is very clearly a completely different bridge set between Star Trek 3 and Star Trek 4. It's
not even close.
That bugs me.
I never even thought about that. You're right. Yeah, it's huge in 4. It's much bigger.
They were on Vulcan for a while though, so they had
Yeah.
plenty of time. Scotty was
Little
in there
remodel.
messing with it, and he
Yeah.
did a
And yet they're all
remodel.
wearing the same clothes as they were in 3. So it's
Right.
like, Kirk only has the one shirt, but they redesigned the whole Klingon ship in that amount of time. But I
Well, I
remember.
mean,
Oh, good.
I was just gonna say this is the first time we see a Klingon bird of prey is in
Yes.
Search for
Yep.
Spock.
It was
So
designed for the. Yep.
yeah,
Am I
it's
wrong in saying the
established
bird
as
of prey is way cooler than a starship? I mean, I'm coming from an outsider's view here. I don't have any kind of romance
a bird
towards
of
the
prey is
Enterprise.
pretty cool.
Bird of
It,
prey
it
is
is
rad.
It
is
is
rad looking.
It's a cool ship, and there's a reason why they kept using it all the way. Even in Enterprise, the Klingon ship that they used in Enterprise is clearly a redressed bird of prey model, made to look a little chunkier and older. But
It's a threatening ship. Like it's
is.
threatening, and like the Klingons are threatening, and this sucker is like it's evil looking. It looks like a
Yeah.
vulture or something. It's cool.
Yeah, it's a neat ship. It's a neat ship, and I think Christopher Lloyd as Krug
Awesome.
is really
Fantastic.
good, really good. And I mean, I know it wouldn't have seemed this way to people watching it in the theater in 1984, but all I could think was it's like evil Doc Brown. Like when
Yeah.
I close
Yeah.
my eyes, it's like it's evil Doc Brown, right? But
Yeah, I had a hard time with that, honestly. Like, I'm just like,
I
I'm not sure I buy it. But also, like, this was, like we're saying, Klingons weren't really all that well defined before this
No.
movie. They existed in the universe, but they really kind of did more story building with them and gave them more flavor and more.
and
They
gave
filled them out quite a bit.
and gave
Yeah.
them a language.
Yeah.
The Klingon language sort of takes more shape here, and like kapla for success. There's sort of
Right.
salute thing that's going to be part of the deal for all time.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Klingons, they were like, oh, like sort of a evil warrior race, and like this is like it filled them out a little bit,
Right.
and
Gives them the honor system. You kind of
yeah.
understand that a little bit more, where the woman accepts her fate. Like the
Yes.
Krug's lover there, she just she's like, oh, I know too much. I understand. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's that always struck me. And also, as far as actors and Klingon makeup go, I always forget John Larroquette
Larroquette.
is
Proud
one
of
of the
New
Klingons.
Orleans.
Yeah. Dan Fielding from Night Court,
Dan
right?
Fielding.
He's a Klingon, and it's like the makeup job is so good.
I didn't
It's
know.
like,
I had to look it up.
Yeah.
Figure out who he was.
Yeah,
I
it's
didn't
like
know which one he was.
I know he's one of them, but I'm the same way. But Krug, I mean, you can tell that's Christopher Lloyd. I think,
Oh, yeah.
which I think was intentional, probably. I'm sure, he's like, look, if I'm going to do this, I want to at least be recognizable, as an actor, if I'm going to be one of the big names. But Krug is great. He's brutal. He's violent. But he knows what he's doing. He's not a madman. He's like, look, this Genesis device, this is a weapon of mass destruction. This is a tool of genocide, and I think we should have it instead. So
Right.
there's all that to it, and it's he's got really well defined motives, and I think Krug and the Klingons work really well in this movie. There's so much more good about Star Trek 3 than bad. I can't imagine lumping it in with Star Trek 5, as just
Right.
it's one of the bad ones. It's like it's not one of the bad ones. It's just not 2 or 4.
Right.
And
it's hard to beat 2 or 4.
Yeah.
Is the
Yeah.
thing. But as Blackwolf was saying, it's like when you have something as big and epic as Wrath of Khan, you can't go bigger than that.
No.
Like, you really do have to scale it back. And for me growing up, I always felt like, all right, so we killed Spock, and anybody that reads comic books or is into sci-fi or any of this nerd stuff knows that nobody's ever really dead. You can always,
Right.
there's always a right around that you can do.
Yeah.
And like figure so this whole movie just seemed like a reason to like bring Spock back. But on this rewatch, I was like, wait, so audiences didn't necessarily know that at the time.
Right.
So I kind of had that in my head, and I'm like, the opening credits don't even list Nimoy as being in the cast. So they leave you guessing. Like, audiences were probably like, So are they going to find Spock? I don't really know.
Yeah.
He's only listed as the director. So I thought that was kind of clever, and like they blow up the Enterprise in this movie too, and they tried to keep that secret, but that didn't exactly work.
Yeah, actually, I think it leaked. A lot of the leaks. I know the leak about Spock dying in Wrath of Khan. That leak was traced back to Roddenberry, who was mad about it. So he leaked it to like the Star Trek fan club or something. He like faxed him the script or whatever. And I think that the Enterprise being destroyed was leaked, and so they decided just to undercut that by putting it in the trailer. So it's like, okay, it's like, yeah, we know it's blowing up. And the thing is, it's like the Enterprise blows up. You see that in the trailer, you're like, oh, what the hell? What the hell? What's going to happen? That makes me want to watch it more if I know the Enterprise is going to be destroyed, because that's going to be something pretty epic. And it wasn't. It was clever and smart and a great tactic on Kirk's part, and it just seemed so realistic. This is something that happens, right? We got to scuttle the ship, and take some of the enemy with us.
Kirk never loses.
Kirk never loses, and
he's the only man to beat the Kobayashi Maru test. So
yeah. So he tricks them, but he does lose. He loses his ship, he loses his son, but he survives. But there's collateral damage around Kirk, and I think that, I mean, not to mention everybody's careers. If it hadn't been for that whale thing, they all would have been, cashiered out of the service. But it's
the whale thing.
The whale, that probe hadn't shown up. It's, destroying the Enterprise was an interesting choice. I think bringing back a new Enterprise in the next movie that looks exactly the same as the old one was cheap. I would have liked him to rename the Excelsior. I think that would have been cool. Let's have a brand new, different ship. But that's
a sucker for the Enterprise.
That movie Enterprise. I remember, I think it was in 8th grade. I got the Mr. Scott's Guide to the Enterprise for Christmas that year, and it's like this guidebook for new crew members, and it's got like all the deck plans and all the uniform stuff, and it's like all the history of the refit. It's like, oh my god, loved it.
I have the Next Generation version of that.
Oh yeah, that's
technical manual.
Yes,
yeah,
it is so fun, and I just loved that kind of stuff. And I remember thinking, when they first announced Next Generation, because that was like right after Star Trek 4. Like actually, I think it was announced around the same time that Star Trek 4 came out. I remember, and then they got the new ship at the end of Star Trek 4. I was like, wait. I was like, I actually had a dream. I'm not making this up. I had a dream when I was a kid that I was watching this new Star Trek series, and it was the old crew on this new Enterprise, and then there was like younger crew members there too. So it was like a mix of the old crew and some new crew members. And I remember thinking, especially after watching some of those first season episodes of Next Generation, that my dream idea was way better of a Star Trek TV show than what I'm watching with this robot guy and the guy from Reading Rainbow. So it was
leave LeVar Burton out of this, man. LeVar Burton's a national treasure. Leave him alone.
The man's a professional. He that first season, nobody was given anything even remotely listenable to say.
Is the first season that bad? I mean, I saw it when I was like 10. I have no memory of it.
I think it is. There's a couple good episodes.
People really hate it, and I've always been surprised by that.
Q shows up right at the beginning.
Yeah,
that's pretty good.
Yeah, the Q parts of the pilot are good. The next time Q shows up is good. There's an episode in the holodeck, sort of a film noir thing that's really good. I think that won the Peabody Award. There's an episode right at the end of the first season called Conspiracy about these slug creatures taking over Starfleet Command, and the Enterprise actually goes back to Earth, and it's really good. Tracy Torme wrote it. He wrote the Fire in the Sky film about Travis Walton's abduction too. So he was an interesting guy. I think he was Mel Torme's son, actually.
Velvet Fog.
Yeah. So it was.
Mel Torme had a UFO sighting at one point.
I think I knew that. Yeah,
I did not know
I don't
that.
remember the specifics of it
Me
at the
either,
moment,
but it
I think it was
sounds.
pretty mild. It was like, oh, I just saw this bright light and then
Yeah,
landed in New Jersey or something.
yeah. Yeah, so that first season of Next Generation is pretty rough. I remember as like a 10 or 11-year old, I was like, or 11 or 12-year old, I guess. I was like, I was just happy with Star Trek on TV, but it was so hard to wait a whole week because I was used to Star Trek being on every night. So
And you were mind blown by the special effects too.
I was when they separated the saucer from the rest of the ship in that first
that
episode.
blew my mind. Like, you can do that?
I was like, I thought this was only rumored to be true, that this was possible, because it was like mentioned that it was a possibility and that in emergencies. But now it's like they made it sound like it was going to happen every week, right? Every time there's danger, you got to send the civilians and the kids off. No, they did it like twice more in 7 years. So, and then,
but I mean,
yeah.
Just like having CG available for the Next Generation, it blew my mind because I grew up with watching the reruns of TOS.
Yeah.
And then seeing that, I'm like, oh my God, this looks so much better. And it was pretty great. But then, Riker grew a beard and that show really kind of took off.
Yeah.
I don't really know what the connection between Jonathan Frakes' beard and the storytelling is, but apparently I'm not the one noticing this. This has been said plenty of times.
If you want a really good glimpse into the behind the scenes hell of that first season, there's a documentary. I don't know where it's streaming. It's called Chaos on the Bridge, and it's narrated by William Shatner. He's sort of the host of it, and they talk to some of the writers and everybody who worked on that first season. It was just a revolving door. Like there were writers, like they were there for like 3 days, and they were like, "I can't do this. I can't work for these people," and they were just they'd leave, and because Roddenberry was running that first season or two with an iron fist, and there's the whole like, well, that's not Star Trek, you can't do that, that's not Star Trek, our characters don't have any conflict with each other because this is the future. And it's like, what the essence of drama is conflict, but the human characters, they're all getting along and they never disagree. I'm like, that's stupid, and I imagine if you're like somebody who just got off of writing like 3 episodes of Airwolf, and you're trying to submit a story to Star Trek, and you got this old drunk guy telling you, well, in the future, you're all having sex all the time, and everybody gets along, and it's like, what's going on here? I'm gonna go like, I don't know, write infomercials or something.
Let me go back to Airwolf for a bit, actually.
Yeah, Street Hawk. Remember Street Hawk?
Oh, hey, no, now we're talking. Street Hawk was awesome.
That was.
I always loved that Street Hawk always went supersonic, and there was never a car on the road.
Yeah,
yeah, that was awesome. Great show.
I just love that the show was like, okay, we need Knight Rider, but with a motorcycle. It's like, yeah. That's awesome.
This makes me think of Nightboat from The Simpsons.
There's a fjord. There's always an inlet or a fjord. No, I will defend Airwolf to the death. That show jammed. And the first season, especially when it was like dark espionage.
Yeah.
And then it got funny.
And Ernest Borgnine, right?
Ernest Borgnine, Jan Michael Vincent.
Yeah.
Great show.
Heck of a cast.
It was awesome, and it was a really fast. It was the helicopter year. Every network had a helicopter show that year.
And there's something to be said for shows like that adults can enjoy and kids can get excited about the helicopter. There's something for everybody. I mean, no 12-year-old kid is going to be sitting there like, I can't wait for the new episode of NCIS. Nobody's doing that. But I
mean, I think as I'm 46, and that was the 80s. Like those were shows my dad and I watched together.
Yeah,
my dad dug the helicopter, and I just dug how stupid it was. A-Team, Riptide,
Hunter,
all those shows, and my dad and I watched those shows together growing up, and there's something to be said for those.
They all had amazing theme music. Mike Post running around, that A-Team music, and whoever did the music for Magnum PI. That was awesome too.
That was good.
It was
everything cowers before the mighty Rockford Files. So there's no better theme music than the Rockford Files.
I agree.
I agree. But Mike Post again, the best. Yep. Well, we got off topic here. Anyway,
Those were all in the same decade as Search for Spock.
Yeah.
It's not that tangential.
Let's talk about 4, because 4's funny.
4's fun. 4's fun.
Well, yeah. I mean, speaking of other movies in the 80s, though, I mean, Black Wolf and I were talking about this via Instant Messenger about how this movie was actually the first feature-length movie that Nimoy directed.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a direct line from this movie to Three Men and a Baby.
Yep.
Which
absolutely.
He had such a weird, like, just the strangest directorial like spread here. 2 Star Trek movies, 3 Men and a Baby, which was, I forgot how just absolutely fucking massive that movie was.
It was huge.
It was ginormous. And of course, we all remember the cutout, right? The ghost.
Yeah.
You all remember the ghost in the movie, right?
Yep.
That scared the living hell out of me personally. I mean, I believe that a kid got killed on the set. What was the story? I don't remember.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
It was
it's like you can see it in the background of one of the shots.
Yes. There's like a kid behind a window on the set, and that was a great time for movies too, where no matter what the movie was about for the first hour and a half, it had to end with a crime. It's about 3 men and a baby, because it's in the title. And I don't know if anyone's ever seen it before, but there's 3 men and a baby. But then
not just any 3 men though.
No,
I mean, it's Ted Danson,
it's the Goot,
and Steve Guttenberg.
Ted Danson, who doesn't do a whole lot in that movie, honestly. And then of course Tom Selleck. So I mean, you have some really great. But there's a baby, and then at some point, someone deals drugs or someone steals drugs. Like there's a Colombian drug dealer or something. And in the 80s, you couldn't just have a movie. It had to be high concept at some point. There had to be a crime. There had to be a showdown at a construction site at some point. That had to happen. And I think Ted Danson dresses as a woman. I don't remember.
I think so.
It's been a while.
Yeah, I haven't seen that since I was a kid.
But I will say one thing. Well directed.
Yeah.
Nimoy knew what he was doing.
Yeah, interesting career that Nimoy had. And you have John Larroquette coming from your part of the world, Black Wolf, but Nimoy comes from Boston. He grew up in Mattapan. So, I mean, when I was a kid, all school field trips would be like to the Museum of Science in Boston. And they had the planetarium there that had this like voiceover narration from Nimoy.
Oh, that's sweet.
That's awesome.
And he would be like, I grew up a few blocks from here in nearby Mattapan, you know, like.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Where I went to when I was looking at high schools. When I was looking at high schools, I went to visit the high school that John Larroquette went to, and they make a very big deal out of it. You ever heard of Night Court? Well, John Larroquette went here. Like, well, John Larroquette walked these halls. Well, I got to be a tiger too. Then I mean, that's very important. I mean, there wasn't much that John Larroquette could do wrong in my household, at least growing up. Night Court was good.
Yeah, and this movie, Search for Spock, came out the same year that Night Court debuted.
Yeah.
So he wasn't even really known for that yet.
Big year for Larroquette.
Yeah.
I do want to.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I love at the end where like Larroquette's Klingon character just pretty much. Kirk gets the better of him, and he's just like, "Oh, well, you have to kill me. Like it's only honorable that I die." You know, Kirk's just like, "Well, get over there. I'll kill you later."
Yeah, it was great. And then he said, "Like I thought you were going to kill me," and Kirk's like, "I lied." You know, that was fun. That was and that's the kind of this little Star Trek humor quippiness that was missing in the first one, and really, I mean, 2 was pretty grim after a point. Right. So there's not a lot of humor. But then 4 comes along, and it's just it's almost a romp.
It's a madcap adventure.
Yeah. There is some madcap involved for sure.
Yeah,
like I forgot about that the hospital sequence where they go to rescue Chekhov, and there's like there's like plate spinning music going on in the background. Like, wow,
that soundtrack, that Star Trek 4 soundtrack was wild. It was different than any other Star Trek. It's like lots of trumpet fanfares, lots of very. It isn't like orchestral science fiction music. It fits.
They had a little bit of a little bit of contemporary music too. When they first
Yeah,
get to San Francisco, there's
the
just
Yellow
like
Jackets, I think.
Yeah.
The Yellow Jackets are playing,
Yeah.
and the sound engineers formed a punk band to write the song "I Hate You," which is
Yes.
great.
Right, for the Punk on the Bus, yeah.
Which is
Yes.
actually reused in another great 80s film, Back to the Beach. Who remembers that
Oh, yeah.
insane movie? Not many movies feature Annette Funicello and Fishbone, but you know, hey, if you want to,
Strange stuff.
strange movie. But
Well,
no,
what I love.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
no,
Go ahead.
you're good. Go ahead.
All right. What I love in Star Trek 4, and Aaron, I'm interested in your opinion, being a Whovian as well, but they're so cavalier about the time travel. And, well, all right. First of all, on the one hand, they act like they've never time traveled before, even though
Yeah.
the City on the Edge of Forever had happened.
And Tomorrow is Yesterday,
Yeah.
and Assignment Earth.
Right.
I think
Assignment Earth. Yeah,
they actually
yeah.
did the slingshot thing in Assignment Earth.
Right.
So
That's where that comes from.
Yeah.
That's how they knew how to time travel.
and then
but Kirk's
you're
just
right.
like, oh, remember that people might seem strange to you, and stay on your toes, and all. Like it's never. I mean, sure, I guess Kirk was mainly the one that was going to Earth, him and Spock and Bones.
Yeah.
And when he pawns the spectacles that he was given as a gift in the second one, Kirk just says, Spock says, weren't those a gift from Dr. McCoy? And he's like, and they will be again. That's the beauty of it.
I love that. I'd love that.
And then Scotty basically tells a guy how to invent transparent aluminum.
Yeah.
So that and Bones is like, aren't you worried about changing the course of history? And Scotty's like, how do you know he didn't invent it?
It's like,
and I'm just just a casual bootstrap paradox there. No big deal.
and it's just like, I love how he said, how do you know he didn't invent it? And then there's no payoff for that. We don't know if he was the guy who invented it or if Scotty screwed up the entire space-time continuum. It's just like, and again, it's a funny line and we move on. And sometimes that's what you need to do. My favorite thing about 4 is everybody has something substantial to do.
Yeah.
It's you got Chekhov and Uhura on the aircraft carrier, and then she beams out
nuclear vessels.
And Captain, it's the Enterprise.
The Enterprise. Actually, it's the USS Ranger was the ship that stood in for it, but because I think the Enterprise was out of Norfolk. So it wouldn't have been, but you have to say it's the Enterprise, right? It's
right.
But it's everybody had something to do. I now I'm okay with it, but I just thought it was a little silly. Spock walking around in his bathrobe the whole time. Now I'm like, okay, that's actually pretty good. I like.
We did too much LDS at Berkeley. I think that's a really good line. I really enjoyed that line. I thought you were from Iowa. Oh, I am from Iowa, but I'm also from the future. Whatever he says. But I work in outer space.
Yeah, I only work in space. Yeah.
I was pleasantly surprised how well it held up. Because I'd probably seen 4 more than any of them. I mean, that movie came on. Yeah. A sizable chunk of my childhood was spent watching Star Trek 4 on HBO. So and it really held up and it was also well paced. I thought it was going to drag at parts. It really didn't.
No.
Maybe the Chekhov plate spinning scene was a little unnecessary. The whole hospital rescue, but
I love that because you get more surly Bones. He's just what is this? The goddamn Dark Ages?
And he gives that lady a pill and she grows a new kidney. It's great. Why don't we just drill a hole in his head and let the evil spirits out?
Surly Bones is always good. It's the second best Bones.
The only thing I thought that kind of dragged for me was at the end after they crash and getting the whales out, and
that felt like Shatner was like, I need a scene.
I need to be the hero. I need a hero.
I need to do something.
Yeah. And it was just, I think with the underwater stuff, I always found it sort of visually confusing to sort of know exactly what he was doing and
I couldn't tell what the hell he was doing.
Because I think I saw it in the theater, and then I read the novelization. And when I read the novelization, I was like, oh, okay, this makes more sense. Like when he's swimming around with the whales, and it doesn't know, like it spelled it out a little more clearly. But I loved so much stuff about that movie. I loved, the scenes in the Starfleet headquarters with like the hurricane winds smashing, like blowing out the windows, and it feels that made it feel a little more apocalyptic, and you could tell it had a bigger budget. They actually went on location, more than one scene or something. That's the thing about Star Trek 3 is the Genesis planet. It was just like, this is a soundstage.
Yes.
This is, and the designer was like, we really need to go to Hawaii to make this look good. Because it has volcanoes, has palm trees, you could do all of those environments, but there just wasn't the money. And Star Trek 4, the sets are bigger, the location filming is great, and I mean, and cheap because it's modern day San Francisco, right? But it's, I think everything about that movie just worked. And from the Klingon ambassador calling for Kirk's extradition to, all of that is the court martial at the end where they bust Admiral Kirk back down to captain. You're sort of closing the loop on a lot of things, including motion picture with Kirk not being happy as an admiral and then becoming a captain. Then by Star Trek 2, he's an admiral again. But sort of, Spock saying, commanding a starship is your first best destiny. And we get to the end of 4, and that's what they're doing on a new ship called the Enterprise. And just like the glasses at the pawn shop, it just sort of all fits together. They crafted for the three movies having 3 different writers. They really made it all work cohesively.
It almost felt like it was meant to be that way, but it clearly wasn't. Like, they managed to stitch that together. I think it was like 4 writers on Star Trek 4 as well, which was surprising how cohesive
4
it is.
it was a struggle because there were some guys who had the initial ideas and then they didn't get credit for those ideas, and they're like, hey, you actually did use our ideas, so you didn't just throw out our whole script. So there was a lot of wrangling back and forth, but it was. Yeah, and I mean, even the way they brought Spock back with the whole remember mind meld thing in 2, that was improv. That wasn't in the script. Nimoy just thought it might be mysterious, and then they're like, okay, that's how we're doing it. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's all good stuff, and the way you mentioned like destiny and the way it all tends to coalesce, it seems like that's really the through line, is that the bridge crew that we have are all always going to end up together no matter what happens. And I think that's kind of a cool thing, even in like the Abrams alternate dimension version, is like against all odds, they all end up in the same place and all end up being close friends anyway. Like no matter what universe you're in.
Yeah.
Even like in Amok Time in the original series, where you have like the alternate reality, like the evil universe version of everybody.
Yeah, they're all still on the ship. Yeah, on the same ship. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, they all know each other. They're all together.
Yeah.
So, I mean, nothing can stop that from happening. So I guess it's the power of friendship, I guess, is the whole thing. And that's what makes Spock Spock realize his humanity.
Also, like about the third one too, because like this Wrath of Khan, there's big stakes in 2 and 4 that there isn't in 3. Of course, the Klingons come and try to steal the Genesis planet thing and all that stuff, and that's big stakes. But the stakes in 3 are just like, hey, let's help our friend. And there's a sweetness to 3 that I like about it. That's what I kind of liked about that. And it did realize on Spock. Yeah, it realized that that those 6 or 7 characters are what everyone's here to see anyway, and so we might as well make them the core of this again. And that seems like, as a person who's coming from outside of Star Trek, that seems like a pretty obvious fucking thing to me. Pardon my French there, but it seems like pretty obvious. Like, yeah, we're here to see those guys.
And I think it's interesting what you said about the stakes being lower. Right. It was about saving Spock. And even with the Klingons going to the Genesis planet was going to blow up no matter what anybody did. So it's almost like nobody made the Genesis planet blow up. Nobody really defeated the Klingons. They would have ended up with nothing anyway. So really the Spock thing is not, it's like the whole driver of the plot. It's the only consequential thing, really, in some ways, because the Genesis, it wasn't like there was a Genesis device they could get. It was just the planet, which I think is kind of, that's the one sort of big hole plot-wise for me, is what were the Klingons actually going to do on the planet? I mean, if the Enterprise hadn't shown up to sort of like get the stuff out of their computer about Genesis, I just, the Klingons' plan never really comes together.
Well,
for
because
me.
Krug had a misunderstanding of what Genesis was. He thought it was meant to be a weapon.
Yeah.
So I think he thought there was some tech on the planet that they could grab and take away.
Yeah. He wanted prisoners, because
he wanted somebody to be able to explain it too.
Yeah.
And he just couldn't believe that they would build something just to create life on a barren planet.
Yeah.
It was a creative thing. It was supposed to generate life. And obviously you have those ethical questions that were built into the story about doing that, which, science goes a little too far. It ends up actually destroying the whole planet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what you say is a good illustration of like the Klingon mindset too. They sort of, it's like the terraforming aspect of Genesis doesn't even occur to them. It must be a weapon. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yep. And Krug was just like totally fine with dying there too, which is it's so funny. He's like, we're both gonna die here, you maniac, and he's like, oh, okay, fine, if that's what's gonna happen, good fight scene at the end. And also one of the reasons I don't really buy Christopher Lloyd as a Klingon, because he's so tall and wiry, and at one point he picks Kirk up by his throat, like he's choking him and lifts him up. And I'm like, okay, I mean, this is Kirk on his heavier side.
Christopher Lloyd is a pretty big dude too. I mean, Christopher Lloyd was a pretty sizable guy. He wasn't a tiny dude. He was wiry, but he was big.
Well, he just didn't strike me as very muscular. And I think
that's probably true.
I think a lot of Klingons, other than him, are like beefy, like they're big guys.
Yeah, it's true. That's true.
Yeah. So, he doesn't have a lot of bulk. Yeah,
right.
The only problem I really had with Christopher Lloyd as a Klingon, and I thought he was really pretty good in the movie, was I kept thinking of Buckaroo Banzai as him as John Big Butte in Buckaroo Banzai, and it was right around the same time too. So it was like he would play these two like really kind of almost the same character
in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and I was like, oh yeah, I kind of forgot about John Big Butte, and like I'm gonna go watch Buckaroo Banzai this weekend because it's awesome.
Yeah, I should watch that again too.
It's a great movie, man. Yeah. Such a confounding movie. Great.
As far as villains go for Lloyd, like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Judge Doom.
Yeah,
like that really messed with me when I was younger watching.
Yes,
I'm like, that guy is intense.
That movie is so not for children.
No,
it really isn't.
Not at all. Not at all.
It's wonderful too. It's one of my favorite movies growing up, especially. I had it on VHS. I watched it all the time, but it is not for kids at all.
No,
it's weird.
It is very strange. I remember even as a kid watching this, like this isn't what I was expecting this to be from the commercials. The commercials sort of make it look like a fun cartoon movie, and then it's like, no, this is grim.
Mom, why is she married to a rabbit?
Yeah, that's. I mean,
Mom, explain this to me, please. I don't have time to explain this to you. Son.
If I can deal with Kermit the Frog and Miss Piggy in a relationship, the rabbit Jessica thing is not that far off.
I suppose.
That's not to think about it.
Right? Yeah, don't think about it. Just don't. And it wouldn't have occurred to me to think about it. It's just like, oh, it's because
just going back and watching it like in my 30s, like, oh, this is bizarre.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Howard the Duck movie. Which is,
I think AP is a fan of that movie. Am I correct?
I do love it. It's like I guess a guilty pleasure, but I have no shame. So
it's not good. It's not bad. It's not bad. It's nothing.
I admire
like
taking the shot.
Again.
I admire that they actually took the shot and made this thing.
Yeah,
it's just how much money they threw at it too. Like that was not a cheap.
Well, because George Lucas was all in with it.
Yeah,
because, I mean, Lucas is sort of like Roddenberry in some ways, because like,
yeah, there's a lot of lot of parallels there, I'd say.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Lucas has talent, but it's I think his talents are more as a director than a script
Writer?
writer. But
Right.
yeah, it's because I
And he
was
doesn't always have the best judgment,
no,
so it's just kind of,
no,
yeah.
it's hard to get out of your own way when you're dealing with a massive creation like that. Probably you get
Right.
in your head about how it's supposed to be, and then you have trouble communicating that vision to other people, and other people are like,
Right.
but that doesn't make any sense, and they're like, yes, it does, because that's how this universe works, in that very
Right. People are
sort
afraid
of
to
way.
tell you it's a dumb idea,
Yeah.
probably, because you have that much clout,
Yeah, I mean, I just Jar Jar Binks. Oh
That's
man.
All right,
I
so
saw
I was
I,
recently hanging out with some old school nerd friends that I hadn't seen in a long time, and one of them told me that Jar Jar Binks was envisioned as like the Sith Yoda, like he was going to be turning into a Sith Lord. That was the original plan, but
Yeah,
everybody hated it so much that they got rid of him.
yeah. I've
But
I've I've seen some like sort of urban legends about, and there's somebody on Reddit did like a whole thing where they prove that Jar Jar Binks is a Sith Lord as it's filmed. They like go through it, and it's like, this is Jar Jar Binks is the greatest evil in the galaxy, and it was fun to see how they made that argument. But it's like, no, I don't think that was the intention.
I
But
can't imagine spending that much time watching those movies. I just can't even. That's a universe I want to spend no time in
yeah,
whatsoever.
I think I've seen Phantom Menace once, and I
I saw it
disliked it.
exactly once.
I disliked it so much that I did not go see Attack of the Clones in the theater. And
Really.
I only saw Revenge of the Sith because a bunch of friends were going, and I actually liked that one.
That
But
one wasn't bad, but
it was,
it's not
yeah,
as good either.
Attack of the Clones and Phantom Menace, they're just so boring. Nothing
Mhm.
happens. It's just like, oh, it's a meeting. It's a government meeting about trade policy. Oh boy.
It's like watching C-SPAN.
It is
dreadful.
It is.
Boring,
And I just don't know how we go from the sort of 1940s movie serial aesthetic of the original trilogy and to that prequel trilogy. It was, and the latest trilogy, it's fine, but it doesn't feel like Star Wars. It feels like, I don't know. It's just kind of bland. I don't know.
Yeah, I only really need the original trilogy.
Yeah.
That's about all I really require, and not the special edition. I don't.
Yeah, I went back. I went online and found the despecialized versions,
Yeah.
where they reconstructed the original theatrical release, and yeah, it's like, okay, this is what I remember watching when I was a kid.
Mhm.
I don't need Jabba the Hutt to show up in the first movie.
Yeah, there's
Outside the
no
Millennium
reason for that.
Falcon, it's a reason it was cut in the first place. I mean, Lucas would say it was cut because the special effects weren't up to the job in '77, but
But it also doesn't move the plot at all.
right, it's
So there's no point of it being there. So.
yeah, it's troublesome, but
Yeah.
off topic again. But
Yeah, we're just old school nerding at this point.
yeah,
But,
I was
but,
an
I mean,
Indiana Jones guy myself, though. So
yeah,
Indiana
Well, those are
Jones
great
all the
too.
way through.
I mean,
those are my movies personally.
Right. Yeah, we're gonna have to do that someday.
I could talk Last Crusade
The
for
Last
days.
Crusade.
I could talk Last Crusade for days. Seriously, I could from memory talk about that movie. I love that
I
movie.
love that one. It's good.
it's so good.
It is
So-
amazing.
So we kind of already covered it, but as far as all of the Star Trek movies, how would you rate 3? Like, we
Where
can include the Next Generation ones as well, but
I would put it in the top half.
In the top half.
The top
Okay.
half of them. I think 2's the best. 4 comes in second. I like 6, but it has problems. I would put 3 sort of tied with 6 of the original
Okay.
films, as sort of like after 2 and 4. And then 5 comes, and then no, motion picture comes below that, then 5, and somewhere out back is Star Trek Generations, and we don't talk about it.
I can't be as descriptive. I've only seen 1, 2, 4, 5, and First Contact. I've seen First Contact randomly and I enjoyed it. So
First, it's a fun movie.
yeah, I enjoyed that one.
Fun
It was good. I like that one, but I've not seen
Well,
any of the other ones.
Generations is the one that has Shatner in it, right?
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
never
Shatner
seen that
comes
one.
back. Yeah,
No.
okay.
It's you don't need to.
I'm good. I didn't think I wanted to.
And it's the other one, Insurrection. No, don't see Nemesis. Nemesis is terrible. It's awful. Actually, there's really only one good Next Generation movie. I think it's First Contact. It's got the humor, it's got the action, it's got Patrick Stewart being all Patrick Stewarty. It's got things for most of the cast to do. So that one's pretty good. But yeah, I did not really dig most of the Next Generation movies. Just
Yeah, nothing really stands out in my memory from any of them. I know I've seen them all, and I just like don't really remember much about most of them.
yeah.
Just like they just kind of washed over, you know.
The
They're-
bits
remember-
and pieces, they kind of look like TV movies to me. The bits and pieces I've seen of them, they
Yeah.
look like TV movies. They don't look like theatrical releases at all.
Yeah, and that's because like the cinematographer was from the TV show, the directors were from the TV show, so it does feel like that, and it also feels like throwaway late 90s action adventure movies. They really do. They don't have any real Star Trekkiness to them. And it's I mean, Insurrection comes close, but it's so boring that you don't care. And Riker shaves
Not the
off his
tagline they
beard.
wanted.
Yeah,
Aaron Gulyas says, "So boring, you won't care."
So, okay, could be okay, but it's too boring to worry about. Yeah, it's yeah, but I think the original 6 movies, 2, 4, 6, and 3 are tied. 5, 1, 5. That's how I'd rank them, probably.
Yeah,
I'll say
All
2, 4, 3, 1, 5. I can't.
Yeah.
5 is. I hate 5. I
5's
hate that
awful.
movie.
5's awful.
Hate that movie.
There's so many things I hate about it. I hate the stupid row 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 your boat campfire singing. I hate Spock's stupid machine that makes marshmallows. I hate when they're rocketing up the turbo lift shaft that the decks are numbered in reverse and there's like 3 times as many decks as should even exist. It's like, why is deck 81 at the top of the ship? Whatever. That makes me so mad.
Although I do like to walk up to people and grab them by the face and say, "Give me your pain."
Yes.
It is fun to say that.
Cyborg was the best thing about that movie.
And
yeah.
I do like to respond. If someone does it to me, I have to respond. I need my pain. It makes me.
And I mean, if you ever want to just bewilder people, show them the Uhura fan dance.
I was going to say that. Yeah.
The guards.
There is so God. That movie, I saw that with my dad, and even like 12 years old or whatever the hell I was, I just like, this is garbage, Dad. Can we leave, please? Like, no, let's do this whole thing.
My dad, my sister, and I went to see it at a drive-in on a double bill, Star Trek V and Last Crusade.
Okay, that's awesome.
It was like
okay, that would make up for
4 hours of entertainment ever.
That would totally make up for it, 100%.
It was fun.
Yeah, I mean, James Doohan by that point was pretty big too. Like, it was like
everyone was pretty big. I mean, some of them just had some kind of like Kevlar girdle in their contract. I mean,
yeah, it's like they're all looking chubbier except for Dr. McCoy, who's looking painfully thin.
He never looked good.
He just looked like haggard, and I was like, I'm worried about this guy.
He is haggard. I mean, he always looked haggard, except when he was big pimping, whatever he was doing before.
That beard.
The beard and the medallion. It's the medallion. The medallion is what it does it to me.
Really sets the whole outfit off.
It's like,
but
I was at a
he's
key
got that
party,
kind of-
Jim. What do you need?
kind of ascot sort of thing he was wearing too.
Yes.
Like, it's just...
it's the most 70s thing ever.
DeForest Kelley never looked good. I mean, the man always looked like he was born 65 and just stayed that way. And he just got more and more leathery and kind of his eyes got crazier. And like I said before, I just liked that it was old people.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it was Mike Nelson in one of his books, Movie Mega Cheese, I think it was, in a review of Generations, I think, where he said, like, it's nice for a movie to be free of guys named Skeet. And it's like, yeah, it is. It's nice to see a movie where it's just old dudes doing old dude things, and I appreciate that because I I don't like modern action films. I'm just not big on 3-hour movies that give me whiplash and headaches. And it was nice to see an action film. I'm putting big ass air quotes around action film where it was people sitting down and shaking at most. Like, I like that. Yeah, and I'm going to give them high marks for that alone. And I will revisit these movies probably the next year of my life. I enjoyed them that much.
Yeah, and I mean, speaking of old people, like Leonard Nimoy really just did it right till the end. Like he's in those Abrams ones as well as like old Spock, like from the other dimension. And he looks cool as hell as a really elderly Spock. Like I think they make him look really cool.
It was really good.
I haven't seen either of those or any. How many do they make?
3.
Are they any good? Worth seeing?
They're very much modern action adventure movies with Star Trek glued to it.
Right.
It's I sort of
it's
think
a Star Trek veneer, if anything.
They're not bad. They're not. Yeah. I think the third one is the best one. The third one's my favorite anyway. I didn't like the middle one. First one was fun the way they introduce everybody and get everybody onto the ship, and that's kind of cool. But the second one, they have like it's sort of a it's like a knockoff of Wrath of Khan, really.
Right.
So it's with Benedict Cumberbatch instead of Ricardo Montalban, which
that's not a really good trade-off.
No. Two great names though. Benedict Cumberbatch and Ricardo Montalban are really solid A+ names though.
They really are. They really
you got to go with, but I'm always going to take.
That's why they hired him.
Yeah,
they're like, who's working today whose name is as good as Ricardo Montalban?
There's nobody.
Rich Corinthian leather, man. That guy was right. That guy was smooth and awesome, and great Naked Gun as well. I'm going to go ahead.
Yes. Oh my god.
Yeah.
He's awesome.
Well,
so good.
That's another one we have to do is Naked Gun 33.
No, we don't. Oh my god, dude, that movie. that is one of the few movies I've walked out on in my life. That movie tested my patience. That one, and I saw the same year. I also saw Dracula Dead and Loving.
Oh my god,
and walked out of that as well. That was my age where I'd go see any movie on the weekend, and it's like, oh, Mel Brooks, this will be great. Oh Jesus,
it was so bad.
Put a guy from two people from Wings are in that movie. That's you're toast when you bring 2 people from Wings into your movie, and that's just. And then, Naked Gun 33 and a third, just everyone just looked really tired.
Yeah.
They really and Nicole Smith
not
doing
Leslie
any
Nielsen.
favors.
Yeah, Leslie Nielsen was just collecting that paycheck. So.
Oh man, yes he was. Good for him though. Hey.
Yeah, I can't blame him for that.
Absolutely not.
But I don't have to watch it.
No.
Right.
No, you don't.
All right. So just as we were wrapping up here. What do you have coming up on the Sauce for Life? Aaron?
Well, this week we've got an interview with Gabriel McKee, who is a librarian at NYU. He's just written a biography of Gray Barker. It's coming out in April. So we talked to him about that. And then in a couple weeks, we're diving back into some late 80s UFO magazine with a zine scene episode or 2 about that, and digging up some more contactees. That
I like to point out, I think we just outdorked Star Trek in that with your and that's just beautiful, man. A guy who worked in a library and UFO magazines from the early 90s, man. We just outdorked Star Trek.
Yep.
It's awesome.
Yeah. So the Barker biography is really good. I read an advanced copy, and it's everything you want a biography of Gray Barker to be. It's detailed, and it puts him in the context of all the UFO stuff that was going on, and it's really good.
Cool. Yeah, well, I look forward to checking that out. And I always love the zine scene episodes. Those are so much fun.
They're fun. They're fun to do too.
Awesome.
This one has a strange UFO music themed rabbit hole. So
hell yes.
I know Blackwolf will enjoy that.
Yeah.
I do have to ask a question because you on Instagram, I messaged you about this. You dipped into my universe recently. You saw Winger, and you saw Winger and Firehouse, man.
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh man, I cannot believe the man just the man just stepped into my world.
Yeah. It was good. The new singer for Firehouse is actually from here.
Oh, okay.
Just one community day. He was on American Idol, I think.
Okay.
And it's so crazy because one of my good friends at work, his son was really good friends with the new singer of Firehouse, and my friend actually taught him how to play the guitar,
Oh.
which is crazy. I liked Firehouse better than Winger. I thought Winger was a little,
Gross.
yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
I have not been kind to Winger.
Yeah,
in my,
we actually left once the drum solo started. There were like three couples. You're like, yeah, let's go. We're done.
Drum solos are not for lovers. That is definitely.
But we were all really liked Firehouse. But I think next concert I'm going to, we're going to go see Cake in August. So Cake's going to be in town. So
we'll save
fun.
my Cake story then.
Yes.
Maybe the worst concert I ever saw in my life.
Oh, really?
They were very drunk, and I don't know if it was just like not a good day, but it was not good. They played 3 songs and walked off.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I think they were just trashed. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what the story was, but I remember, and I didn't pay for it, so I didn't really care.
Oh,
I used to work in a record store. I get free tickets all the time.
Oh, nice.
Nice. Yeah, Cake was one of those shows, and I was like, oh, this will be fun. And then they just walked off. I was like, huh, well, I guess I'm going home now.
That's upsetting.
But no, otherwise, I have no real opinion on Cake either way. They're fine.
Yeah, I've heard they put on a good show. I've never actually seen them, but I like Cake. I like their songs.
Yeah.
I would go see them if I had a chance. But yeah.
All right.
All right then. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It has been a pleasure.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
Hell yeah. So to both of you and to everyone listening, live long and prosper.
You can't see, but we just did this.
We're doing the Vulcan solution.
You can't.
We're doing it right now.
It was beautiful.